Hello, welcome to the 2021 season Tournament of Champions umpire training. My name is Don Waddell. I'm the California District 4 umpire-in-chief. During this training session, we'll be covering the District 4 Tournament of Champions, how our very important role as an umpire can make the experience for our players special. This has been a challenging season following on the 2020 season, which really never happened. So we've got a great opportunity for our players in the Tournament of Champions to go away with some memories that will stay with them, reflecting on their experience in Little League. So the important part of training in this session is really threefold. One is cover what is the Tournament of Champions, how has it come to be, and what are the key elements? What are the playing rules for Tournament of Champions? And then what are the points of emphasis for Tournament of Champions, including your role as an umpire? Let's jump right in and talk about Tournament of Champions. What is the Tournament of Champions? Let's use TOC as the short acronym for Tournament of Champions. The TOC is special games played under the authority of the district administrator, Ted Boet. What's a special game? A special game is something approved by the charter committee in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, that allows Ted to run a tournament that includes teams from across multiple leagues played under a special set of rules that have been endorsed by the charter committee and actually authorized by the regional administrator in San Bernardino for the Western region. So that already raises a few questions. If we have special games that aren't part of a local league, what does that tell us that happens in these TOCs? And we've been running for over 50 years. Well, first we find that the teams that come together from each league, typically they're the champions of their league from the regular season, but they've played the entire year using their local league rules and regulations. And these local leagues may not have included all of the Little League rules and regulations in their regular season games. So teams and managers, players often aren't aware of these rules and regulations. However, local leagues are not to be used at TOC games, even though we play the games at a local league site. So all of our teams in TOC must follow the Little League rules. And Little League rules go beyond just playing rules. They include regulations about players and teams, pitchers, equipment, and then all the safety standards that are included in the Little League Safety Code. All these must be followed as we play a TOC game. Now, we also know that the umpires for TOC, they come from all the local leagues throughout the district. So sometimes they're not aware of all the Little League rules and regulations, and especially procedures that aren't used during regular season, such as managing lineup cards, taking substitutions, inspecting equipment. For all you umpires here following through this training, these are all mandatory activities that we'll cover through the session. The important thing about TOC is the key volunteers that run the tournament, umpires, managers, and the on-site tournament directors need to work together to make sure TOC games proceed without issue. Let's talk a bit about playing rules for baseball and softball TOC. As said, the game rules are specifically those covered in the official rules and regulations, not the tournament rules that are in the rule books in the back section. Those tournament rules apply to the international, say, all-star tournament. Our games are played specifically by the regular season rules covered in the regulations and rules 1 through 9. Supplementing those rules are the District 4 interleague rules for both baseball and softball. There are some modifications to the interleague rules as they apply to Tournament of Champions, but generally the interleague rules overlay the official Little League rules. As said, no local playing rules or safety standards or procedures are to apply. However, since we play these games on fields of local Little Leagues, each field must have a set of ground rules. And you as the umpire need to become familiar with those ground rules and then make sure they're reviewed at the plate meeting with the managers so that they are aware of the ground rules and they can inform their players. There are no time limits on a game. It's played to completion. Only those things which are covered by the rules, such as curfew, times, darkness, weather, unplayable conditions, will end a game. In the Little League rules, there are several options that local leagues have surrounding several specific rules. They can decide to use them or not. So here's how in Tournament of Champions, we're addressing several of those options. First of all, batting order. Teams will bat only 9 players. There is no continuous batting order since these are major softball and baseball divisions in TOC. If a team does not have 9 players, they can begin the game and continue the game with 8. However, if they drop below 8, the game cannot continue. If there are only 8 players, a missing spot, say the 9th spot, will just be passed over, no out recorded, and will go on back to the number 1 spot. As said earlier, no time limits. However, the special pinch runner and the courtesy runner, as covered by the specific rules, are allowed. Third strike not caught is in force, as these are majors divisions. The rule covering the batters remaining in the batter's box throughout the at-bat, Rule 602C, by keeping 1 foot in the batter's box, will be enforced. I encourage you to review this rule in detail, as there are several exceptions. There are only a very minor number of cases at which the batter must keep their foot in the batter's box. Remember that we need to enforce this rule by if the batter leaves the batter's box by not keeping a foot in, and it's not one of the special exceptions listed in 602C, then we are to inform the batter loud enough for the manager to hear. Batter will keep 1 foot in the box. That is your warning. If in subsequent pitches they continue to leave the batter's box, and it's not one of the exceptions in the rule, we are to call a strike. I encourage you to look at this rule in detail. The stealing of signs, which is covered by Rule 901D, actually says that stealing of signs and relaying them to the batter can be considered to be unsportsmanlike. Rule 901D provides penalties for this unsportsman activity. However, we're not going to enforce those penalties, which generally are ejection of the player and coach or manager who's involved in the stealing and relaying of signs. However, we are to not allow it to occur. If you as the umpire see stealing of signs taking place, you're to stop action, inform the manager this activity must stop. Run rules. We know that games can continue with large run differentials occurring. In TOC, the run differential rule to end a game is 15 runs after 4 innings, or 3.5 if the home team is leading, or 10 runs after 5 innings, 4.5 innings if the home team is leading. Note this is 1 additional inning for each of those run thresholds that is covered by the rule in the rule book. This is to allow the game to continue so more players have a chance to participate. Moving on to mandatory play and substitution. This is quite an important area, especially if the teams participating in the Tournament of Champions have played continuous batting order during the regular season. Since we are batting a 9-player batting order, we have specific rules governing substitution and mandatory play. So recognize mandatory play is 6 consecutive defensive outs and 1 at bat for a substitute. And the substitute cannot be replaced or the starter not re-enter until that substitute has met the 6 consecutive outs and 1 at bat. The starter, mandatory play is only 6 defensive outs. They don't have to be consecutive, but also 1 at bat. Starters may be removed from the lineup prior to meeting mandatory play, but they can only re-enter once the substitute has met the mandatory play and may re-enter anywhere in the lineup. Only players in the starting lineup may re-enter. Substitutes may not re-enter. This is a significant difference from what many leagues are doing in regular season. A starter could re-enter as a substitute for another starter. However, then they would have to fulfill all conditions of a substitute, 1 at bat and 6 consecutive defensive outs before other starter could re-enter the game. And players not in the starting lineup may not re-enter except special circumstances where there's no eligible substitute for a player who has to be removed for something such as illness, injury, ejection. So those are covered under special provisions, which I encourage you to review in Rule 3. Those were the mandatory play requirements and substitutions for the Majors Baseball TOC. For Majors Softball TOC, it's slightly different. We're following Rule 303 as is written in the rule book today. The mandatory play requirements are the same for a substitute and a starter. The starter can be removed prior to reaching mandatory play. However, starters re-enter once the substitutes met mandatory play, but only in the original lineup position. So what you basically have is the starter and the substitute are, quote, married in that spot in the batting order. And then once both the substitute and the starter have met mandatory play, substitutes can re-enter, but only in that married spot in the lineup. So keep this in mind as you're recording substitutions and keeping track of mandatory play. Now, we used a couple terms there about what a defensive out and an at-bat. So a defensive out is player enters the field on defense in one of the 9 defensive positions and occupies that position when an out is made. So that doesn't mean they have to be there at the beginning of the inning. They could go in for a player and be followed, be on the field while the out is made. And the at-bat, what is an at-bat in the regular season in Tournament of Champions? A player will enter the batter's box with no count, completes that time at bat, retired as a batter runner, scores, or the inning or game ends. So note that if a player came into the batter's box replacing another batter halfway through an at-bat with already having a count, that would mean that that substitute batter had not met the definition of at-bat, and the prior batter that they replaced did not meet it either in that specific at-bat. Let's move on to pitcher restrictions. The softball pitcher. A pitcher who pitches in 5 innings in a game may only pitch in 4 or less in the next game, no matter how many days separate the games. This is different than the rule book. This is a specific District 4 rule to encourage multiple players to be pitchers. Baseball, we're going to strictly apply the regulations regarding pitchers, the number of pitches per day, and the days rest intervals as the regulation outlines. And the rules regarding catcher to pitcher and pitcher to catcher will apply for baseball. I encourage you to look at those in the regulations and make sure you're aware of how those impact catcher to pitcher and pitcher to catcher substitutions. The TOC protest. How are protests handled in Tournament of Champions? First of all, I don't think we should be encouraging protests, but we should not be rejecting protests. If a manager believes that an error has been made in the application of a rule, then they can protest that specific decision. What's not protestable is your judgment or the judgment of another umpire. So if the manager wishes to protest, they must do it in accordance with Rule 4.19. The protest is made to the umpire in chief on the field prior to the next pitch, the next play, or an attempted play, following the play in which they want to protest the decision made. At that point, action will stop. All the umpires will get together and make a ruling, either to uphold the ruling that was already applied by the umpire making decision, or change that ruling to something that all the umpires after conference can provide the input to. Again, the umpire who made the original call should make any changes or confirmation of the call following the conference of all umpires. If the manager still does not agree with your decision, they can continue to protest. At that point, the tournament director will step in and take the protest decision-making process away from the umpires. They may use a protest committee. The tournament director may ask one of the umpires to serve on that protest committee. And the protest committee will make a decision. The umpire crew chief will then provide the ruling made by the tournament director. Tournament director's decision is final. Now, who is a tournament director? Tournament director is a local volunteer from the host league who's at the game, who's been watching the game action, hopefully. Remember, they may or may not be rule experts. They may or may not be umpires. They may or may not be managers. So we need to remember that whatever decision is made, that decision will be reinforced by the umpire crew and the game will continue. Forfeits are not allowed to happen. If you get to a situation where you think play cannot continue, we need to stop the game and ask the tournament director to contact Ted Boet. Now I'd like to talk here a bit about how to manage the behavior of managers, coaches, and players. So really in the pregame, what should we expect from managers, coaches, and players? Prior to the game, only the manager and 2 coaches are allowed on the field. And coaches are defined as adults, or if they have 2 coaches in addition to the manager, 1 adult and 1 other coach over the age of 16. Oftentimes, we're going to find parents or other individuals on the field. You may have a team have 4 or 5 coaches, if you will. We need to ask the tournament director to remove the extra adults and only allow the 3, the manager and 2 coaches, on the field prior to the game. No coaches may warm up a pitcher anywhere at the game site. Oftentimes we'll see a coach in the bullpen warming up a pitcher. We need to stop that. Players doing warm-ups with a bat in their hand must have a batting helmet. Oftentimes we'll see players hitting wiffle balls or other softballs, not hitting regular baseballs, not wearing batting helmets. The concern is not the ball against the head. The concern is the bat against the head, which is why we want players with bats in their hand around others with bats in their hands to have a batting helmet. Similarly, a catcher fielding infield outfield practice near a coach who has a bat must wear the catcher's helmet with the dangling throat guard. What's the concern here? Again, it's a swinging bat. It's also the ball coming off the bat from the coach. We also have balls coming in from the other fielders that they are practicing with. So the catcher can be distracted and move into the area of the swinging bat. And players warming up a pitcher prior to the game must have a catcher's helmet with a dangling throat guard. During the game, remember, only a manager and 2 coaches are allowed. Don't allow a team to have a 3rd coach, in effect, a 4th adult, placing one of those adult coaches right next to the dugout, sitting in a chair next to the gate or open fence of the dugout. Ask the tournament director to have that individual moved away from the dugout. At least one adult coach must be in the dugout at all times when there are players in the dugout. This means even between innings. Oftentimes we'll see coaches wander out of the dugout to talk to players, talk to each other with their back to the dugout. We have players in the dugout with no adult. There needs to be one adult in the dugout at all times. No coach may warm up a pitcher anywhere during the game. Most importantly, coaches and managers must be inside the dugout during live action. This means there's no standing or sitting on buckets outside the dugout. Hopefully the field you're umpiring at will have an enclosed dugout with nowhere for the manager or coach to sit outside. But often you'll find a dugout that's open on the end, and the managers and coaches will want to sit on buckets at the end of the dugout, arguing most typically that they can't see their players through the fence, or they can't coach their players through the fence. Well, most of our dugout fences are chain link fence with large openings, and clearly the managers and coaches have no problems communicating with umpires during the game through the fence, so they can communicate with their players through the fence. Coaches must remain in the dugout between innings and may take base coaching positions only after the catcher throws the ball down after final pitch of warm-ups. What's a good way to manage this? Remember, coaches are adults, so if they get injured with an errantly thrown ball, that's really something they caused. We ask that they remain in the dugout. However, they may want to remain just outside the dugout, just outside the gate, up against the fence before taking the base coaching position. If you allow that and doesn't interfere with the warm-ups, that can be an effective way of compromising with the manager or coaches. However, it's much better to just have them remain in the dugout with the gate closed, with no possibility for errant balls entering the dugout, finding a player or a manager or coach. And then once the ball goes down, they can take their position in the coach's box. And again, if field does have gates on the dugout, they must be closed during play. So now that we've worked hard to keep managers and coaches in the dugout or in their coach's box, how can we make sure they're doing that during the game and not interrupting play? Remember, they're only allowed to come on the field when time is called and the umpire grants them the opportunity to come onto the field. Manager may request time for only a limited number of things, to meet with one of their defensive players. If they do that, that will count as a visit to the pitcher. If they're on offense, they can call time to meet with one of their offensive players to discuss something other than injury. They're only allowed one of those per inning. If they ask for a second timeout, say, sorry, coach, you had your one. They can also ask time to visit an injured player. but only after play is ended. Don't let them run out onto the field when there's an injury until you have secured action and have called time. They may also ask for time to meet with an umpire to formally appeal a decision made by that umpire. And they can only go and talk to the umpire that made the call. They're not to be granted time to go appeal a judgment call. They're only to be granted time to appeal a decision that they believe was made in conflict with the rules. And finally, managers, coaches, and players are not permitted to show verbal or physical objection to any call of an umpire at any time during the game. Do not allow that to happen. The best way to handle this is with the raised, open hand held up to that dugout saying, that's all we're going to do about that, or I've had enough of that. No other warnings, just inform them we're not talking about those. More things that you and umpires need to be aware of. We must inspect the game equipment prior to the game. Ask the managers and coaches to get all of their equipment out in front of the dugout, ready for you to inspect. We're going to look for bats. We're going to look for cracks, dents, other damaged bats. Those are defective. We're going to look for illegal bats that have sticky substances on the handle. The length and diameter are proper or improper. Does that bat really have the right logo? 1.2 BPF for softball or USA bat for baseball. We're going to check helmets. Look for the NOXA logo. Look for decals and stickers that are excessive. The guidance here is anything more than 20% of the helmet surface. Any repainting, these things make helmets illegal. The concern of painting and excessive decals and stickers is they can cover damage, or they can cover the NOXA logo and use the umpire cannot see that damage or to confirm that it's a safe helmet. We're going to look at the inside and look for missing and torn padding, loose or missing screws on face guards. And then check that the cheek guard that's attached to the helmet is from the same manufacturer as the helmet manufacturer, and there are no holes drilled in the helmet to accommodate those other than what the manufacturer had from the factory. If you find any equipment that's defective or illegal, give it to the tournament director. We also need to inspect the catcher's equipment. Much like batting helmets, on catcher's helmet, we're going to look for the NOXA logo, cracks, missing, torn padding. Check that the face guard and all screws and other devices holding in place are secure, and that it has a dangling throat guard. No dangling throat guard, it is not to be used. Anything else that is protective equipment used by the catcher, you should check to see that it's in good repair. So moving on to some other key rule areas and things that we need to be aware of to make sure that the game runs smoothly. Lineup changes, very important. A manager can only make an offensive change when that player is coming up to bat or they are entering the field as a runner replacing another runner. Do not take offensive changes 4 or 5 batters in advance. Only when they come to at bat. The defensive change happens when the player enters the field on defense. Hopefully the manager has told you they've made a defensive change. If not, you have an unannounced substitution. And that's a valid substitution perhaps, or it may not have been a valid substitution. Remember, as lineup changes are brought to you, you need to check against how each player has done relative to the mandatory play requirements, how that impacts the substitution, whether they were originally a starter or a substitute. Record all those changes on their lineup card and ensure that the scorekeeper has all those changes properly recorded as well. Again, on the lineup card, keep track of pitcher changes catcher changes, all substitutions, special pinch runners and courtesy runners, and all offensive and defensive visits. One area of concern is the use of electronic devices on the game. The Little League rules indicate that no cell phones or electronic devices are allowed on the field of play, even for scorekeeping purposes. Scorekeeping is not to be done on the field, it's to be done in the dugout. So they can use a scorekeeping application on an electronic device in the dugout. So something like Game Changer could be loaded on a phone or on a tablet, and that could be used in the dugout. And no manager, coach, or player can communicate outside the dugout or outside the field to anyone else using a phone. Now, if you have a first responder that's involved in the game and they need to have their phone, we can recognize that and they can inform you that at the pregame meeting. Okay, we covered a lot about rules and a lot about things that make TOC special. Let's move on to you as the umpire and how we want you to manage the game. First of all, you represent California District 4 during TOC. You're not a local league umpire any longer. Don't wear your local league or other association markings. Take pride in how you appear as an umpire. Leave no questions about being impartial. You may be in a game with your local league involved in the game. Remember, don't show favoritism, don't show friendliness, and don't socialize with people outside the fence that are your friends and neighbors. Those do not lead to being impartial. Make a good first and lasting impression as an umpire. Who are eligible TOC umpires? This list should have already been communicated to you by your league chief umpire. We'll run quickly through these. You need to be approved as a volunteer by your local league board of directors. If you're an adult, that meant you have submitted your name for a background check, completed the volunteer application. The president has reviewed these and nominated you to the board of directors, who then approved you specifically as a volunteer umpire. You need to have worked in the regular season as an umpire for your league. We don't want umpires who just come out for the tournament season. We want you to have game experience from the regular season. We need you to be experienced at the umpiring at the division you're nominated to work at. So in the case of this year's Tournament of Champions, we have major softball and major baseball. You should have had experience at the major level during the regular season. We want you to have good working knowledge of the small diamond umpire mechanics as recommended by District 4 and by Little League Baseball. We need you to complete several California specifically required training: concussion awareness, the Safe Sports Youth Abuse training, and the sudden cardiac arrest awareness training. These are all required trainings in California for individuals in responsible charge of youth sports. We want you to agree to not accept cash payments to umpire games in the Tournament of Champions. And you need to be recommended by your chief umpire and president as a tournament umpire. We recommend that you also be a member of the Little League Umpire Registry, which can provide you with good tools and other resources that improve you as a Little League umpire. Where do I find the information on this required training that was discussed? If you go to the District 4 website, California District 4 littleleague.org, under the main page on the menu on the left, you will see Little League forms. If you click on that, up will come what's shown on the right. And on the left-hand column, halfway down, is a section called Required Training. Those are all active links that will take you to the required training actions. All three of those are short duration training, less than a half hour, at which you will receive a certificate of completion. Let your league chief umpire know that you have completed the training by providing him or her with your certificate of completion. Also, to get ready for the tournament, we encourage you to review and have access to the 2021 Little League rulebooks. Nearly all of us have the digital online version of the Little League rulebooks, not the paper version. It's available for $1.99 one-time download cost for both Android and iPhone, available on the App Store. On the right-hand side, you will see the California District 4 Umpire Resource page. At the top of this page are links to take you to several training sessions held earlier in the spring covering rules and umpire mechanics. I encourage you to review those. At the bottom are active links that take you to the guides to umpire mechanics. You can review those at your leisure. How are umpire assignments being handled for the Tournament of Champions? As said, each of you have been nominated by your local chief umpire. The District 4 chief umpire, myself, is responsible for selection assignments of umpires to all TOC games, working, of course, alongside your local league chiefs. Umpires will be notified of their game assignments by email prior to the start of TOC. An umpire crew might consist of 2, 3, 4, or 6 umpires. And depending upon the crew size, we expect you to use the standard District 4 umpire mechanics that I referenced on the prior slide. Let's say you are assigned to a game, and in TOC, there's limited number of days. There's 2 days for Tournament Champions softball, and there's 3 days for Tournament of Champions baseball. So we don't have to check for too many changes, but this is a good checklist to go down. Make sure as you're getting ready for your game, check your email, text messages, make sure there's been no change or cancellation. Go out to the District 4 website, find out who won the prior game, who are the teams involved. The day before the game, contact your partners. You'll have all their contact info. Verify where we're going, what time we're going to be there, what are we wearing as the uniform, where are we parking. Make sure your uniform's in good, clean condition. Your shoes are polished. Make sure you're ready for the game you're going to umpire, whether it be baseball or softball. What are the rules and what are our mechanics? Arrive at the game site 45 minutes before game time at the location that you agreed with your partners would be the parking. Bring all your umpire uniforms and equipment. Just in case something happens to your partners, you're prepared to step into a different role. And have your partner's cell phone numbers just in case something breaks down. When you get to the game site, find the tournament director. Make sure you know which game you're doing. Is there parking for umpires closer to the field? If not, tell the tournament director where you're parked. Hopefully away from the crowd who after the game may not like the way you called the game. Ask if any of your partners have showed up, and if so, where are they parked? And find out from the tournament director what they have planned for the pregame. The umpire pregame. Hold an umpire pregame with your partners. Be on the same page on how we're covering things using the standard mechanics, but there's always a few details. Trouble balls, fair foul, first to third, tag ups, time play, signaling. Make sure you're all together on what the special tournament champions rules are. Check each other to make sure you're properly dressed, especially the plate umpire, that they have all their protective gear. And then an important thing is, what are we going to do after the game? Enter the field as a team, stay together. Smile, this is a game, have fun. Enter, walk the field, look for unsafe conditions, find out areas of special concern for ground rules. Then go together and inspect the team equipment. Have all the equipment placed for you outside. Same umpire who checked bats on one side will check them in the other side. and remove the illegal or defective equipment. The pregame ceremony may be brief or it may be detailed. They may announce the league officials, the teams, the umpires. They may do the national anthem or the Pledge of Allegiance, the Little League Pledge. If so, be professional in how you stand during both of these activities, behind the batter's box, out of the way, so parents and spectators can see the teams. Face the flag. Your hat goes over your heart, off the top of your head, over your heart, not your hand goes over your heart, not your hat on the heart. Now we're going to have a pregame meeting 5 minutes or so before the game. We'd like the umpire-in-chief to introduce the other members of the umpire crew. During current conditions, we're not going to shake hands on that, but we do want to do introductions. Plate umpire then receives the lineup cards and goes through a verification of the lineup cards, checking for 9 players in the batting order, checking the names and numbers, asking which players are not eligible to pitch, any restrictions in softball innings, and confirming the starting catcher. Asking, are your players properly equipped for Little League Baseball and softball? The answer must be yes, or there's no game. Confirm the ground rules. And tell managers that if they have a question to request time, wait until time is recognized before approaching an umpire. End the meeting, have the home team take the field. This meeting should only take 2 or 3 minutes. While it's happening, tell the teams to remain in their dugouts until the meeting has completed. During the game, base umpires should end up being in the outfield between innings, looking out to get hit by warm-up throws. Plate umpires should be up the line facing the team coming to bat. Don't spend time talking with your partners. Hustle the players in and out. Keep the game moving. If there's a pitching change or other changes and the plate umpire is recording them, one of the base umpires should come down and help out. Stay away from spectators, managers, coaches. Stay hydrated, and please do not use your phone or check email. When a game ends, leave the field through the winning side. Be courteous, don't address or mingle with spectators. If they thank you, say you're welcome. Keep moving towards your car. Have a post-game meeting with your team, focusing on improvement areas and recognizing where excellent performance happened during the game. If you have any incidents, please send me an email or call me direct to report them following the game. We have a standard District 4 lineup card. We won't go through this in detail, but it provides places to capture all the information that we've covered already earlier in the training. And here are some examples of how a properly completed lineup card should look, with names, first initial, last name, numbers, positions. Nothing's duplicate. Everything is easily read. The team name, the manager, home or visitor, and the date. And as changes are made, here's a recommended way of handling those changes. This guide is on the District 4 Umpire resource page. You can download it and review it in your detail. The important thing is to keep a lineup card with all the important information. What is the California District 4 umpire uniform? We would like you to be in the pro black or pro blue polo shirt with a Little League umpire patch. Notice the pictures of the shirts desired are on the lower right. Depending upon what your crew has selected, you can wear a black or white undershirt. The black California 4 hat with the Columbia blue lettering, or pink if you're doing softball. No local league hats. Black shoes, socks, belts, a black jacket if you need one, black ball bags for plate umpire, and charcoal gray slacks. If your entire crew matches and you're wearing something else, that's acceptable. But we need to have the Little League umpire patch on our shirts. And as said earlier, bring everything to the game. You never know when you might have to step in as the plate umpire. We've covered a lot in this short training. Where can I go for more information? As said earlier, review the tools and mechanics guides on the District 4 Umpire Resource webpage. Lots of good information there that will help you get ready for the TOC. Watch the rules and basic mechanics videos also on the resource webpage. Join the umpire registry, download the rule instruction manual, more information on how to interpret and apply the rules, and talk with your fellow league umpires and get ready for a great tournament season. If you have any questions following this training regarding tournament umpire procedures, scheduling, uniforms, you can contact me, Don Waddell, the District 4 Umpire in Chief, at my email address, llcad4uic@gmail.com, or my phone number, 925-788-6346. If your question is regarding Tournament of Champions rules, you can contact Jim Rose, jrose001@aol.com. The last thing we'll leave you with, remember, Little League baseball and softball is primarily a game. We use the sport of softball and the sport of baseball to teach our young player life lessons in leadership, sportsmanship, and behavior. It's just a game, but we have other objectives in mind. So have fun and enjoy the Tournament of Champions. Thank you.